Commission meeting, Tuesday, September 12th. It is 7:05, and we are happy to have the new sound system. I hope I'm using it properly, and I would like to take attendance. Our chair is on vacation in Ireland, so I am Virginia Morse, Vice Chair. I'll look towards you folks.
Glenn Koppelman, Select Board Representative.
Madeline Willett, member.
Willett, member.
Rob Tozzolo, Planning Board Representative.
Dan Doyle, member.
Thank you all.
You all get A+.
Yes, okay, so far so good. I don't have any critical correspondence from Susan, so I am going to move on to minutes. We have two sets of minutes. Do you all have a corrected agenda that I passed out? Did it?
This is the one I printed from.
Okay.
You have an updated one?
I just have the addition of the SWEDs that are coming, and the date on that one should say June 21st, not June 12th.
Crossed out.
Crossed out at the top?
Oh, agenda. No, September 12th.
Not today.
A little further down, under 7.
The minutes. We need to look at the minutes from June 21st and August 8th. So let's take June 21st. That was a short meeting that we had to accommodate a special need. And I'm not sure that it had been sent out before, but it has been sent out since. So are there any comments, corrections on the Wednesday, June 21st public meeting? Okay. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of June 21st?
How about if we take a motion?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
I'm a little rusty. I haven't done this for a bit.
You've been in the water a lot.
Yes,
so,
I
you know.
have.
Motion to approve June 21 minutes as written.
Second.
Okay. Yes, yes. All those in favor of accepting the June 21st minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And one recusal, Dan, for whom we were meeting. Okay, and now the minutes for our most recent meeting, August 8th. Are there any corrections or omissions here?
I have a few corrections for the last page under the joint planning board HDC preparation section. That was very confusing, so it's really good. Let's see. The second bullet point, let's see, it says, Susan shared that Town Attorney Grandy recommended the HDC ordinance 102.4 and 102.5 be removed and relocate them to separate ordinance. Thank you. But she also said, and this is what needed to be added, but that may only be possible through a much larger project than the town is currently considering. And then it goes on to say she also requested that the ordinances 102.9B and 102.9C be incorporated into the regulations. So that was one correction.
Okay.
And then under public comment and discussion, Scott Willett, who's here, it says he encouraged the HDC to pursue having an overlay district to help resolve these issues. He actually did not encourage them to pursue that. He was explaining the differences between an overlay district and an independent district, and does not think we should pursue an overlay. Those were the only changes.
I noticed that as well. This next section, Virginia noted Attorney Grandy is concerned that both the planning board and the HDC have jurisdiction over the districts, and an overlay district will help mitigate this confusion. Does that appear to you that that's what Scott said, or what we interpreted for Attorney Grandy?
That looks like what you said that she said.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to leave that But we'll do, that Scott did not recommend an overlay district. All right, any other corrections? All right, again, I'll look for a motion to accept with the changes we talked about.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended for August 8, 2023.
Second.
Okay, again, Glenn and Maddie, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, that is unanimous. Very good, thank you. Town board updates, planning board. Excuse me. Rob, any news from the planning board that we should be paying attention to?
Not lately. They're waiting for the joint meeting.
Yes.
Because as you're discussing here, they're discussing their changes. As you're discussing here, they're discussing their changes. They got a long list of them. It's gonna be a long meeting, I believe. Bring snacks.
Okay, and we have a reminder right on our agenda that that meeting is scheduled for October 3rd.
Correct.
What time do those meetings usually start? 6:30? 6:30. Okay. All right, Selectman Glenn, is there something that you would like us to know in particular?
Well, I guess the one item that is particularly pertinent to the historic district is and I think I've alerted you all to it, and Dan heard the story at the select board meeting last night, that the town applied for a grant and has received it to install treatment systems into 20 homes that have contaminated water from the PFAS at the fire station location. So we have the grant contract now. We're in the process of putting an RFP together to send out and get bids on installing systems into those 20 residences, and also setting up a program for maintenance and monitoring of those sites into the future. So we expect that the RFP will be done this week or next, with the hope of getting it out for about a 14-day reply period, meaning that we could open bids late this month, or maybe early October, depending on when the RFP actually gets out, and select a vendor and hopefully get this project underway so that we get the systems installed before winter time. That's the objective, because right now, as Mr. Doyle can attest to, there are 20 homes right now living on bottled water, and that ends up to be a logistical nightmare in the best of times, and it becomes a real challenge in the winter trying to keep that water from freezing. So anyway.
20.
Yes, 20. There are actually 27 sites that are 26 or 27, 26 total. But 6 of them, the residents had already on their own put in treatment systems. So there are 20 more to go. Oh, and that's right, the town did, yes, yep.
The town, I'm sorry, the town what?
Put in filtration systems for 3 residents or 4?
I don't remember. It was, do you know, Lori?
Less than 6, so I think it was 4
Okay.
that they installed.
So 26 sites that are contaminated, 20 of which still need treatment systems.
I have a question for you, Glenn. I know that I've been contacted and will be attending the Selectmen's meeting next Monday night in regards to the future of the Nichols Library / museum. Can anyone attend that? I would like to hear just a little bit about that focus, and the board should be aware.
Oh, sure. The select board, of course, has been looking at budgets and looking at opportunities for savings, and the chair of the select board wanted to bring up a particular item to investigate the cost of, and the Nichols building was the item that he identified as one that he wanted the select board to look at, review the costs, cost-benefit trade-off and all of that, and to have a conversation about, depending on what the results of the analysis of the costs are, to discuss possible options for disposition of that building. And so we also agreed that that building touches a number of different organizations in town, Heritage Commission, the Museum Committee, and HDC in particular. Obviously Planning Board as well, because Planning Board has jurisdiction over planning in general. But so when it was decided to have this public discussion, I made sure that all of those groups were specifically notified and invited to participate. We notified the chair of each of those groups, but certainly it's a public meeting. It's going to be on October 18, which is a week from September 18, sorry. That's what happens when I don't have notes in front of me.
And what time do those meetings start?
6:30.
6:30 also.
Yes.
Just a couple quick questions. First, the grant, is that federal or state?
Well, it's federal money that has come to the state. So it's New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services.
Alrighty. Do you have the paperwork on that? I always like to look at those grants.
Susan Ayer in the select board's office has it.
Excellent. And the library, is that the building you're talking about now?
That's
is
not
that
the library.
Connected to the other two at all, or are they all separate?
All separate.
Okay. All right. Who controls those?
They're all town-owned buildings.
All town-owned building? Oh, okay. And they're just looking at, are they looking at those two?
The chair of the select board wanted to look at the Nichols building in particular,
Okay.
which currently is the headquarters for the Kingston Museum, the historical museum.
All right.
So that meeting is happening this coming Monday.
Yes.
Yes, this coming Monday on the 18th at 6:30, and it's a public meeting. Obviously, it's the regular select board meeting, and it will be one of the agenda items. And I would expect that it would be a busy room, be a lot of discussion. The select board chair has reached out to the finance director to gather some numbers going back a few years to get some data on costs for things like heating and maintenance and so forth, and hopefully we'll have that information for that meeting.
Thank you very much. Next up is Heritage Commission, and we actually have Ernie Landry here, so we don't need a summary from Susan, who isn't here. We're going to hear directly from you, so come on up, Ernie. Ernie, I know you're here to talk about the Plain Cemetery, but I appreciate getting the minutes, even though I'm not still there every month. It looks like you've got a lot of things that you're doing or have checked the box and accomplished. So do one or two of those before you talk about the Plain Cemetery. Things you've accomplished, what you've got for projects on the table. I think that's really interesting.
Okay, well, let's see, this past weekend we had a booth at Kingston Days to let folks know what we've done, what we are in the process of doing, and at that meeting handed out some of the items from the Historic District Commission, the walking tour brochures, the video tour of the Historic District, as well as copies of the Kingston Chronicles, and so people were interested in those, and we handed those out to them. As far as projects going on, we've got several going on right now. One of them is a continuing project where we call it a lost history project. If we know of a building that's going to be demolished or that's in tough condition based on neglect, or if it's a significant building that really is not in jeopardy but should be memorialized, so to speak, in documentation, then we ask the owner if we could go ahead and memorialize that by going in and photographing it, doing a history of it, researching the deeds, the family history, and so forth. And so we've done a number of buildings in town. The most recent ones were the Peasley Tavern, which was recently sold, and the old fire station, which we all know what happened to that. And so we do that on a regular basis when we find one of those buildings that is in jeopardy like that. One of the other projects we want to do this year is to send out letters to owners of the historic houses in town, and there are quite a few of them both in and outside of the HDC, just to remind them of how important it is to maintain the house, thank them for doing that, and then offering up some information about possible sources of information that they can go to if they need some information about maintaining the houses. And what we'll do is attach a copy of the 1983 survey that was done by the then Rockingham Planning Commission, I guess, that identified every house over 50 years old at the time and gave some history on it. So we'll send that out with those letters. Of course, the Grace Daily Barn, we're working with the DPW on that, supporting that effort as much as he would like us to support it. He's got a plan in place and is going to be moving on that shortly to redo the sills, the joists, the floor, support posts, some of the exterior siding, and then next year to do the roof. And that's quite a project, and he's having the lumber for it, a hemlock milled locally, so that's pretty interesting, pretty nice. And then the other major project we have is for the Plains Cemetery, and I could go into that if you like. We got a pretty good sized project potentially with the Plains Cemetery. You all know that it was put on the National Register back in December of 2021. And so it's going to have an anniversary pretty soon, in 2025, it'll be 300 years old. It's a great embodiment of the history of the town when you think about it. All of those people who were notable in the founding of the town and the development over the years, a lot of them are buried there. Very significant ones, certainly Josiah Bartlett and Levi, his family, Major Sanborn, and others. So it's important to get it in shape for the anniversary. There hasn't been a lot of work on the cemetery, a lot of major work on the cemetery in quite some time. And so it's in a condition where it could be rehabilitated and cleaned up for the celebration. And so we're trying to get a steering committee together of the HDC, the Heritage Commission, trustees of the trust funds, the library, and the museum, to kind of develop a plan to help with the rehabilitation of the cemetery and also to plan for the celebration. The cemetery maintenance has been moved to the DPW this past year, and Phil is doing a good job of getting a lot of stuff done. It's mowed a lot more than it was in the past. It's trimmed a lot more than it was in the past. And so it's looking a lot better than it has looked from that standpoint. But the stones, the gravestones, are what really need a lot of attention. A lot of them, some of them are tipped over, some of them are leaning. Most of them have a lot of lichen and moss and mold and whatever on them, so they're really hard to read. And so one of the rehabilitation efforts is really to start to clean and help to reset some of those gravestones. And I got some pictures here I can just pass around, and you can see as far as cleaning. We've done some cleaning on about probably 40 of the stones at this point. But there are over 500 stones really that need attention out there. So it's kind of a big project. And so if we can get a steering committee together, everything that we would do would be under the auspices of the trustees of the trust funds and the DPW, because those both organizations are responsible for the cemetery. And primarily our role will be supporting the DPW and maintenance and rehabilitation of the cemetery. So what we would do as far as cleaning and resetting the stones would be to have a group of folks out of those 5 organizations that I mentioned who are interested to receive training on how to actually clean the cemeteries, clean the stones, and how to reset the stones that are easily reset. There are 4 of us in town who had that training. Phil's guys had the training this year. And so the plan is to have John Lord from the New Hampshire Graveyard Association come down to do the training for the folks now who want to get involved in the project. DPW would do the major rehabilitation out there, but this group that I'm talking about could actually easily do the cleaning and do the resetting of a lot of the stones, particularly the smaller slate stones that are out there. Part of the process is also to collect data off of the stones, and so as we clean them, we have a form to fill out that lists all of the information that's on the stone, including epitaphs and all of the dates, names, what the iconography is that's on the gravestone and all, and then to take a picture of it so that we have all of that data. And what we would do with that is provide that to Phil, who manages the cemetery find data, so that people who are looking to get information on the cemetery go to cemetery find, so all of the data would be up to date once we complete the project. And then also to take that data and put it into a database that the museum has called Past Perfect, which can then be put online for access by the public. And so data collection is also a big part of this, to try to make sure that we collect all the data that people might need to do genealogical or other research, as far as the cemetery goes itself. So it's a pretty good sized project to do that. We've got to, this year and the remainder of next year to do that. I think, with the size of the group that we're thinking of, it's about a dozen people or more, so I think we should be in pretty good shape to do that. One of the other things is the pump station that's out there, the well, is really in pretty bad shape. And Phil is going to rehabilitate that. The plan is to demolish that pump station that's there and put in a round culvert, probably, 3 feet high or whatever, and have a pump station in that, and then to actually face that culvert with stone, with rock, so that it looks like the pump station that's there now. And so once that's done, there will be a space on it for us to put the cemetery's National Register plaque on it. So that will be in place hopefully next year. So anyway, that's the rehabilitation part. From the celebration part, it's open-ended. There are all kinds of things that we could do with the celebration, and that's what hopefully the steering committee will decide. But we could do things like cemetery tours, walking tours, guided tours, and self-guided tours. We had Glenn Knobloch a few years ago do a tour out there and had 75 people. It was very well received, and we could do that kind of thing again at the cemetery. Folks have talked about potentially trying to find a way to have QR codes in the cemetery so that the person going in could use a QR code to gain information about the cemetery. I don't know anything about that. I'm a technological hazard as it goes. So, that's way out of my wheelhouse, but people are thinking about that kind of thing. We talked potentially about having displays at the library of iconography. How they have the art shows there, potentially have displays of the iconography, maybe some of the gravestones of the Revolutionary War veterans who are buried in the cemetery. There are somewhere around 20 Revolutionary War veterans buried there. Things of that nature, brochures potentially that could be used, and then potentially some types of educational activities with the schools. And so it's pretty much wide open, the opportunities that we have with this project. We can make it as big and as good as we want to make it, I guess. What I like about it, if we can get the steering group together, is that it's a project we can all work on. Each of the organizations that are involved in heritage in the town, we kind of have our own little niche, as well as does the library and the trustees of the trust funds. And so this would be an opportunity for all of us to work together on a project that crosses all of the lines and really get a little bit more of that interaction and involvement. And actually, it's also can be a laboratory for us to develop a process to use in helping the trustees of trust funds and the DPW in dealing with the other cemeteries that we have that are also very historic. And so it opens up a lot of opportunities as a project. And that's pretty much what it boils down to.
So if people want to participate, they contact you? They go through the chairs here, or what's the best way to say, hey,
Yeah, anybody here who's interested in it should just go through you, maybe
Sure.
so that you're aware of it.
Sure.
Just let me know the name and the contact information. We're hoping to have the training maybe in a couple of weeks, so that we can get moving. The process we use to clean them, we use a biocide on them, and that's good. That's okay up until about 45 degrees temperature. So we can probably work through October, maybe into early November, and then kind of take off for the winter and start back up again in the spring. So, but if you're interested in it, again, let Virginia know. I can tell you from my personal experience, it's an interesting opportunity in a number of ways. First one is a lot of satisfaction, immediate satisfaction, in seeing something go from something you can't even read to something you can read.
you can see that in those photos you passed around. Yeah,
It's
amazing.
And some of those photos are stones that were done, I don't know, a few weeks ago. They'll get even cleaner than what you see there. The process also isn't to get it clean and looking like new. The process is to get rid of all of the stuff that helps the stone deteriorate so that they don't deteriorate any further than they already have. So that's kind of what we're looking at. The other part of the project is it's hard to not start to feel like you're getting to know the people who are buried there. I mean, it's kind of weird to say, but as you clean the stone and you read all of the dates and the epitaphs, and you see the children who are buried next to their parents, some of whom died prior to their parents, it just makes you kind of think, about what life was like way back there in the 1800s. So it's a pretty interesting process.
Good, good.
Any thought of maybe reaching out to the school and get some of the high school kids, if you got 500 stones?
Well, I think that the steering committee needs to talk about that. I think it's good to get the kids involved in some respect.
Open up a whole new world to them.
Yeah, I think it would have to be, the object is to do no harm to the stones.
Right.
And so we'd have to really train them well and so forth. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity.
Imagine, they do community service,
Yep.
I think, still in the high school, right?
Right.
Maybe offer that.
Oh, they
My
would-
kids go to private school and they have to do community service.
Yeah.
So I was gonna volunteer my family for my kids to do community service. As long as they get like something from the town, so they volunteer for 40 hours of community service or whatever. But should be doing, there's a pool of kids that I know we can pull from locally here that do go to private school that would probably love to help.
Okay, and those are the kind of things that the steering committee needs to talk about, how we implement something like that. I think initially what we'd like to do is get the members of the groups trained so that they're all set, and if we could branch out after that. That's a good point.
Then we branch them out to the second cemetery.
Pardon me?
We branch them out to the second cemetery,
Who knows?
right? There's lots more than 500 names.
Yeah, the key to it, I think, all is again, that whole do no harm, and you have to have, they would have to have somebody there to work with them, which
It does open up
easily
the
done.
door of history.
History, absolutely, absolutely.
Is there
And research.
I've seen some cemeteries where they actually have a adopt a headstone,
Oh, really?
where a family could adopt a headstone and take care of it, maintain it, and stuff like that. I mean, that's a program that I check out also.
Well, I think, yeah, and again, we're doing this under the auspices of the trustees of the trust funds and the DPW. So they're the people who would have the final say in how we actually do this. At this point, you know, we've got the plan laid out so far. As the committee meets and we get more involved with ideas like these, those pass by the trustees of the trust funds.
Ernie, do you have a start on who is on the steering committee? I assume some or all of the members of the trust fund, probably not all of them, but, and DPW, and probably Heritage Commission, but have you had some people signed up already? We have 3 or 4 people, or are you just starting for the steering committee?
Well, there'd be one person from each of the groups. So right now, it's basically just, I am from the Heritage Commission. Melissa from the library would be one. Jeff Flanders McDougal from the museum. I'm waiting on a name from the trustees of the trust funds.
Okay.
I'm assuming maybe you would be the rep from here. That's an assumption only.
As long as I get to clean some stones, I'm dying to learn how to do that and clean those. It's just, that could be arranged.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Very
it's
good.
very interesting. Well, I'll leave you with a quote that's attributed to Benjamin Franklin. I don't know if he said it or that went around, but basically the quote was, "Show me your cemeteries and I'll show you the kind of people you have." And I'm sure he wasn't talking about the people there, but the people who really should be caring for that cemetery. So I think it's important that we do a good job.
We need to step up.
Yes, step up. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Appreciate it.
everybody on the board knows how to get in touch with me, and Susan's not here, we could sign her up for a lot of things. She's actually the HDC rep to the Heritage Commission, so she knows about this. So, thank you very much, very much. Okay, next, Dan Mastrioni and Deb Millette are coming back to us. They have a project going, and step up, try the new mics. I'm going to pass out the paperwork that you've given me, and people can see what you are. Oh, this is the original. Thank you. So if you remember, Dan and Deb have purchased property on Church Street, and we approved their, you know what, I'm gonna send 2 your way because I've looked carefully at it, so I'm all set. Sorry, Stanley. So we approved, certain changes, a handicap ramp, several different things, and for them to have this as a antique store. And part of the application said that they were to come back to us with their plan for the sign. So I'm going to let them tell you what they have here. So Deb, make sure you introduce yourself so we get it on the record.
I'm Deb Millette, 14 Church Street. It took us a while to figure out a name for the business. Decided on Church Street Antiques and Gifts because it tells where we are and what we sell and what's more important in a name than that. Sorry about that. We took the old sign from, what was the name of the Carriagetown News, and Dan revitalized the whole thing, took it down to its original wood and then repainted it. So that is actually standing right now, ready for the words and the name on it. And we have our sign designer ready to go as soon as we say the word tonight, after we get the approval for the lettering and the name. That's it.
So one of the conditions was the distance of the sign back from the road and from either side of the property for the boundaries. And I think I understand that where it is meets those requirements.
It's 16 feet from the road, so there's no blocking of the traffic if you're to back out, and it's at least 50 feet either way from the.
So is it actually in the position that it was?
Yeah, no, we took it from the old position, which was on the other side of the driveway,
Oh, yes.
and put it in the new location.
So it's standing, I drove by tonight to take a look, it's standing there, looks nice, it's all painted white, fresh, all spiffed up, and they have a very nice foundation around it of crushed rock and mulch, so it's ready to go. So any questions or comments about the font, the name, the colors, or whatever?
Can you just run? Could you run us through the dimensions of the sign? I just want to check it against the ordinance. I'm assuming you have, but don't want to make any assumptions.
Those were in the original application. So, but we do have it.
Okay.
I haven't.
And we might have even talked about this when you were first in, but to be honest, I don't remember.
My recollection is that it was approved. We just had to come back
Oh, for the design.
for the lettering and the font and things of that. But where it is now was in an approved spot. The actual lettering part is roughly 42 by 48 inches, 48 high, 42 wide.
Okay, so that's under 24 square feet.
Oh,
Yeah, which is the limit.
I mean, do you have this one? It's the actual old sign that used to be out there that's been redone.
So it's actually the same sign, nice, cleaned up and white.
Okay.
So the lettering's gonna be black? And are they gonna paint it on there?
No, it's a decal.
A decal. So that's what's there.
And it's 10 feet high, which is within the 12-foot high limit for historic districts, so that's fine. And
We actually lowered it down a little bit more.
oh, okay.
I think it's at the peak, not quite 7 foot, at the very peak of it.
Okay. And the lighting on it is no lighting or, because I think exterior lighting is permitted.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, but you're not proposing any lighting. Okay.
So I do believe that we approved the size of it at the last meeting. I didn't look at the minutes, but it is under the required size, so for both height and square footage. Anyone else, any questions or comments? Okay, so now I'm not putting my green light on. it'll take a little training for all of us. My light wasn't on either, so.
So I think it looks good. I think it looks good. It's the right height and size. So I think I'd make a motion to approve it as submitted.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, second from Glenn?
You could take Stanley.
Second from Stanley. Okay, second from Stanley. All those in favor of approving the sign as presented tonight, or as submitted tonight, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? There you have it. So, you're familiar with the process in which I'll send that to the building inspector. I'm not sure if they need permit from the building inspector to add the lettering, since they already had permission for the actual sign and the position of it. Do they need to go back to the building inspector? I'm looking at planning board, I'm looking at selectmen.
Well, it's a good question. You already had a permit to put the sign up, yes?
Yes.
You haven't had any interaction yet with the building inspector?
Not for the sign.
Okay, probably a good idea.
Yes, you should check with the building inspector.
Okay, because we didn't do that for. Sorry, we didn't do that for the last sign. So we should go to the building inspector for that too?
Yeah, because signs require a permit through the building inspector.
Even though we paid for a permit here?
Well, you came here for a certificate of approval to do the work, then you need a building permit from the building inspector.
Oh,
It's a two-step process.
got it, okay.
I thought that's part of the package, because it said there's a fee in there for a sign permit.
There is.
Well, that's for certificate of approval for the functioning that goes on here. You'd be wise to check with the building inspector, is what we're saying, because signs do require permit.
Yeah, any fees that are paid to the town for your appearance before this board is really just covering administrative costs for the town and the board, and any permits beyond that are above and beyond, and it's through the building inspector.
When he was out there verifying the 50, did he maybe include any of that when he was out there for the verification of the 1,500 square feet? Did,
That was just, no.
no, because obviously you've met with him, because he came out. Right.
We've had change in building inspectors.
Oh, okay, all right.
All very confusing.
Yeah, there's been a change in inspectors since you started this process. We no longer have a full-time person, but we do have somebody filling in on a part-time basis temporarily. So let us know if you have any trouble reaching them and getting response from them. But you still need to do that step. And if we didn't explain that the last time, apologies.
So the HDC certificate of approval, just like for what you've done so far, be coming your way. You don't owe us any other fees. That was built into the original fee here for that application. But I'll send it to you. I'll send a copy to building inspector, and then you check with him, and good luck. It's looking nice there.
I walk by everyone. I walk by there, and then I make the corner, and I catch the flowers from the forest. It's like the best walk ever.
Yes. Deb, may I keep this copy of the application? I'm sorry? May I keep this copy you gave me of the application? Oh, sure. Okay. I always have a copy of the application. I had to fall on my sword. I could not find it, so she made me a duplicate. I'm saying I gave it to Susan. Thank you, good night. Okay, so this is all together. And Stanley, can I have yours back, and then I'll have a copy for Susan as well, of the picture of that. Just give it a shove.
I wrote something in there.
It's fine, it's just fine, thank you. Okay, oh, Virginia. We have an addition to our agenda tonight. Lori and Dan Sved. I'm not sure I say your name correctly. Swed? Swed, okay. They're at 157 Main Street. They came previously and now have solar panels on your roof. I see there a new roof underneath and a nice shiny set of solar panels. And now they want to do some work around the house inside and out. So first of all, let me apologize that I checked today and you were right. The notice of this meeting is, print notice is on the board and at the library, but was not put on the website. And I trust I've taken care of that. So what we should have, we meet every second Tuesday unless there's an election or a swap of some sort. So those dates should all be on the town calendar on the website. And then when the agenda is developed, that should be added, and neither were there. So when you went to look, you're right, it wasn't there. So I hope that's fixed. So we just got the application yesterday, and we have some lead time required to go over an application. So I told Laurie that we'd do an informational session, and they can tell us what they have for plan. I have their application here, and I will pass it out. And while I'm doing that, I'll let them talk.
Dan and Lori Swed, 157 Main Street. We've been here, Kingston residents, for 11 months and a week, I think.
Can't hear so much in 11 minutes.
It's my third one of these meetings, so.
Probably feels like years at this point.
No, it's really gone by. It's fantastic property, fantastic town. It's wonderful to have Kingston Days in your front yard as a welcome to the town.
It was a busy place.
It's pretty cool, and the graveyard in the back. So what we're doing is the house is set up. Original construction was 1825, would be the front house. The next house attached to it was in 1840. That's the middle house. And then there's a back house of an undeterminate age. Somewhere 20 years or so past that, they started cobbling it together. That's our current kitchen, is in that back at the end of the middle house and the beginning of the back house, which was different degrees of probably outhouse and kitchen historically. But very little trace of that is left. So on that end of the house, previous owner, Chris, what was Chris' last name?
Go.
Chris Gove put in a sliding glass door, which is abhorrent and doesn't belong on an 1825 house. So we intend I didn't do that. We are going to put in a modern door still. Oh, there you go. We intend to replace it with a modern door, but it'll be a single door instead of a sliding glass door. And then in the void where there probably was a window or two originally that has since been removed, we're going to add windows. The windows will not match existing under the current plan. They'll be casement windows. But it's pretty far back on the house that you can't see it from the street. And the only reason I'm doing casement windows is because on the other side of that is now a kitchen. Historically, again, we don't know if it was outhouse or storage or what that piece of the house was. But for the kitchen to function and have any kind of a counter or sink, you need to be up higher. So, and have windows you can get to, which a casement window is pretty much the only way to have a window that functions over 24 inches away from a wall. So we're proposing 3 casement windows. The mock-up in the package shows that. It's a doctored up picture, but it shows the current condition as well as where we intend to put the new door and the 3 windows. So I think it's a pretty good representation to see what it'll look like.
As part of this project, we have to, how big is the beam, 17 feet? We have 2 support beams in the kitchen that we have a structural engineer and we have to span the kitchen, but he has to frame out the door. So we have to get this approved before we can start the rest of the project, so.
A lot of the original house, as you can imagine, was unpermitted, going back to 1825, I'm sure.
Previous owner did the beam that she's talking about, we're replacing himself. It guarantee you it was not inspected by anyone or passed by anyone. So there's currently a missing wall with a very questionable beam, and that's what we're replacing with an actual engineered beam. But that's all inside. Now, you don't see any of that from the exterior of the house, which is what you guys are looking at.
I actually looked up your house. I looked up your house, and right, that blank space used to be a door with a covering with a corbel underneath. So it was actually an entrance or exit right there. So maybe a back kitchen door. Yeah, so that was just really interesting, because who would have thought? Yeah. I do. It's online, actually. You can find it online. What is it? Yes, yeah. Oh, and it also shows that you guys had a screened porch on the side. So that's kind of cool. So I always wondered if they had two entrances. Well, which way would you go? Yeah. So Chris has stairway on this side. Yeah. Isn't that funny? So funny how it's changed.
So Maddie, I have the inventory sheet. I'd like to see what you saw, because the inventory sheet I have is a copy of the master inventory. Can I see the one you have online?
Oh, that's the one.
My copy is very poor quality.
Well, this is just a picture of the screen. And I was able to just, when you zoom
Oh,
in.
yes, right here, see?
Right there.
Yep, so you've got the same shadow.
The picture came from the inventory sheet that was done when Ernie was up here talking about the inventory that was done years ago. Yeah, where through the planning commission, a historic preservation person was hired to do the inventory, and so there is an inventory on each and every old home in Kingston.
I read that before.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't remember that being. There's a deck now too, going straight out. Yeah, towards the deck. Towards to the deck. That's unfortunate. The railing to the deck is right in the
Actually, you have a similar thing on the other side of the house.
A slider on the other side as
A
well.
slider on the other side of the house?
Yes.
With a small deck?
Yes.
Yes, on the driveway side.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, yep,
Is that something?
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
is that something you're thinking of changing, or are you changing this not to make it more historically correct, but because you need to for your indoor, inside work?
It's to change the layout of the kitchen is not functional, and the only way to make it more functional is to redo the layout on the inside. So part of that is taking these two beams that Chris installed and doing another cross-engineered beam, and it's opening so it's just for functionality, because we have that deck out there, there's a slider there, so we're trying to minimize that, but to make the kitchen functional.
So I shared the 3 copies, so I'm gonna ask a question, I think it's answered on there. Tell me about the door that you're putting in. I saw that you were going to keep the molding, or the trim, if you will,
Right.
all around the door. What will that door look like?
So we haven't picked it yet. We want as much glass as possible. I envision an all-glass door, which would probably have a 6 to 8 inch band around it with the blinds built into it, because it really is to get glass into the kitchen, but we haven't picked that yet. That's the current plan.
So
The same
it's-
thing with the windows. I haven't
It's still
ordered.
a slider?
No, it's just a single door.
It's a regular door.
Oh, so it's gonna go down to one door?
Yes,
It's
so,
gonna be a single
so, right.
And it's gonna be on the left or the right-hand side of of the slider? Because you've got 2 sides. You're gonna take out the
It's
left?
in-
Depends on which way
It's,
you're looking at.
so
If
it's,
the outside, it's gonna be the right side.
the window, so looking from the outside, it's the right side door. Basically,
so-
that door moves over just a few inches and stays
Okay.
there.
Okay.
And as far as the other room, we don't actually know the history of that room, other than it's made of the right materials to be 1840. I don't know what it was used for. So that's in our figure it out department right now. We don't know what's going on with that one.
The other slide, I know that you were talking about.
It's not really functional. It works, but I don't know what it was, and I don't know what we would rather have it be. So it's a future meeting.
I just need a functional kitchen.
It definitely had a purpose. Just don't. It's on the 1825 house. It makes a great
Right, so while people are looking and thinking up their questions, I'd like to read you a little bit of the descriptor from the 79 survey. The Bakey House is an interesting Greek Revival style house with a pedimented gable oriented to the street that contains a louvered triangular vent, that's up over the top, the middle. Entries on the north and south elevations have 4 panel doors with full-length side lights and are sheltered by a 1-story shed-roofed entry porches supported by square columns. Windows have 2/1 sash and are framed by shutters. The windows in the northwest gable end have window caps.
Shutters are gone everywhere. Those windows are the last intact windows.
Okay. 2 sheds in the rear and a small greenhouse borders on the cemetery. The greenhouse is gone. Yes. The Silly/Bakey House is an outstanding and unusual vernacular example of the Greek Revival style. It is remarkably well preserved and is, in fact, one of the focal points of this section of the plains. Historically, there was a carriage shop in the rear, which connects this fine house to the carriage industry responsible for Kingston's prosperity in the early and mid-19th century. So then it tells specifics about where you're located and all, but I thought that, if you hadn't seen that right up, it's an interesting one. Okay, questions from the board?
Oh, I was gonna say, I pushed it. Yeah, that it said it was an outstanding and unusual vernacular example of a Greek Revival style, and it is remarkably well preserved and is in fact one of the focal points of this section of the plains.
Right, that's what I was just reading.
Yes, I know, so I just
Okay.
wanted to emphasize that,
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Okay, questions? So officially, this is not their application that is on the table. It's the application, but it is mostly for information. Is there any information missing from this application that you think, when we have a decision to make, that they would need to add to the application?
Well, normally the application would include samples, cut sheets, whatever, of the various things that you're replacing, like the door, the windows, the trim, stuff like that. And I don't know if that's, I'm guessing not, because you said you hadn't picked the door yet.
In fact, it is. The constant, any substantial change like this affects the facade, and it is not restoring it to the types of windows that would have been there, or the types of entrances that would have been there. So any change this substantial means I don't take it as a given that I'm ready to or able to pick a door. I know what I want, but I don't actually know what you would have limitations on. So I kind of need a feel for that. So in showing you the outline, I'm 100% sure that that is exactly where I want a door and the size of the door, and that I'd prefer a window that size and location. If it comes down to the materials of a door and a window, I can get that to you within 24 hours. That's not a problem, but it's not as if I can do that or order those materials until I have approval. So I was waiting for that to really get down to the materials.
Okay.
Well, I would say, I think it's really important that we see what that window's gonna look like. I don't have a problem with the different size of the window, but I think it should match what's there because it's really visible as you're coming up the road. That whole facade is right there. I mean, it's a beautiful standout focal point coming up the road. You don't just see the front of your house, unfortunately. So I think that would be important that we see those windows, what they would look
So
like.
it's gonna be very similar to that.
Yeah, I can't picture what you've drawn there. I see.
It's just three, it's not gonna be, if we do the same size window that's on there.
That wouldn't work.
That won't work because
Right.
you're not getting a lot of light in.
Exactly.
So it's really just a rectangular casement.
Are there gonna be divided lights in there at all?
No, so there's, in the windows, your main limitations are up, down, left, right. Then you find out what your limitation is from there and figure out what windows should be proportionally from there. So this is a kitchen, it's gonna remain a kitchen, there is a countertop on the other side. If you look at the historical windows going towards the main facade, and this is why there's no window there now. If you go down those windows are very large and they go very low. They would go 9-10 inches below where a kitchen counter would be, which would not be functional at all. So now you're raising that up to a counter, then 4-inch trim, plus a wood trim for the window, you've come up another foot. You're already 2 feet from the bottom line of the rest of the windows. From the top line, I now have to put in headers to carry the weight of the house to put a window in where there wasn't one, because there's no trace of the original window, thanks to the scrap heap that the last guy did. So I've got to come down to put that in, which lowers the window past what the rest of the windows in that elevation are. So already my structural constraints have taken a line and reduced it to 30 inches versus a 60-inch window. A 30-inch window can't be made to look like a 60-inch window. Right. So with that in mind, and then the functionality of the kitchen being foremost for us, because being on the third house, I don't think it's as important that the window replicate the first two houses. It is in line and visible from the street, but that far down, I felt it was okay to go with a different window, especially since there's no historical one there at all now. That said, if you put in that amount of light, plus the restriction of the sides, and start putting in subdividers, you can't, standing at a sink, see through that. It stops being a clear viewpoint. So that's from a kitchen standpoint, not a historical perspective. We could try to mirror the panes of glass with fake ones, but they'd be out of proportion, no matter what size we made the windows. So it would look like a knockoff. And if you're not gonna match it, historically, you should be different.
Well, in our house, we have the same thing. We've got the same thing, long windows, deeper than the counter, almost to the floor. But then we put it on the side, just a single window. And I've seen where they put windows on the side with casement on the side. So you've got the middle section, but you've got the divided lights just to match that whole line of windows coming down. I mean, I know they've got different sizes that you can play with.
That's true, I'd rather not. I'd rather not. Proportionally, it won't look right to me.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I can't, but.
Yeah, turning it on its side would give it a different, it's gonna be a different size anyway, because it's going up there, so. It would make it, I don't know, I'm thinking it should somewhat be in line with what's there. Because, and here's why I say that.
Right.
Hold on a second.
In the picture.
In the picture, it's hard to visualize. If you maybe in the application showed the white trim window with the trim similar, you know what I mean, to that window, okay?
I see what you're saying.
Right, I just think, because right now it looks like you're putting in a commercial black window that,
Gotcha.
right, that in this picture, somehow it just contrasts a little much. You know what I mean? If you look at the bottom at the basement windows, of course, they don't have the dividers, but you know what I mean? You can see the contrast of, they look like they're good, you know what I mean? And that one looks like you're taking a black trimmed window and sticking it in there. And again, I think it's just because of the way you drew it, but I think maybe if you, in the application, just brought, this is the window, take it out of the catalog, take it out of book, take it, this is the window I want there, it would be a little easier to visualize.
Yeah, I can do that. Right. It's not gonna, it won't be in alignment with anything, it can't be. So up and down won't be, and then there is a window, okay,
It's just,
Okay.
the trim.
okay.
Okay, got it, all right. Take
What's your trim around it gonna be as far as banking?
I'll try to explain to you my worst nightmare. I've lived in different historical districts, I live on the plains myself, and there was a guy that he took a black commercial door and stuck it on the front of the house, and it ruined the whole street. You know what I mean? And I know that's not what that's going to be, but there, it's hard to visualize. If you can match the trim and show us a picture of that window, it just would be a little easier for us to visualize.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, and I'll get a cut of the door I'd prefer and everything.
Yeah, it's the same issue with
Yeah,
the
that's
door,
easy.
just, I mean, you don't have to buy the door, but
Sure.
you pick what you want.
Yep.
Or maybe in a couple of options if you have a couple of options. And,
Okay.
and just a brochure with a cut sheet or with picture on it,
Okay,
of what the door would be.
and when would we need that to you by, to,
Hold on just a second. So when, just to add to what they're saying, when I write up the certificate of approval, I try to be as specific as possible. And that certificate, as you know from the one you had before, it says if you make any changes.
correct?
And what we found was if we weren't specific enough, oh, okay, you're gonna have a door and a window, window's okay place, door's okay place, but we don't see specifically what it is, sometimes we go, oh boy.
Sure, right.
So that's why it's really important to see exactly what you choose. Or if you say, we don't know if you like this one or this one better, or approve this one, what you like is your choice, as Maddie's saying.
Right.
But you can bring two choices and then make a decision. So that will be very helpful. Now, they've trying to beat the weather and get an appropriate kitchen on the inside of the house. And we have made accommodations for an in-between monthly meeting. And I'm wondering, I've got my cell phone out to look at my calendar, I'm wondering if we can, to finish this application, do an extra meeting. I lost my calendar. Before our October meeting, which wouldn't be till October 10th. And so, we need 4 people for a quorum. My schedule's pretty open, because I'm retired. But other people, like Glenn, has a meeting probably 8 days a week, right, Glenn? Plus he works. So I'm wondering if there's another date that members could meet and do a meeting as we did for Dan in June. So here we go. 18th is selectmen's, Monday nights is selectmen nights, that's not good. Tuesday night is always planning board except for ours. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I'm gonna throw out a date.
Sure.
Because in the next couple of weeks, I think I've got one evening that's not booked at
Okay.
the moment. So
Okay.
I'll throw it out just as an option.
Go ahead.
Wednesday, the 27th of September. That's the 4th Wednesday of the month.
Yeah.
Well, but
Gives you 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks before the next meeting.
before the next meeting. And that's midway. I mean, you guys, if you could get a quorum without me, more power, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
He could miss a meeting, right?
I could.
So I'm open. Rob, what's your agenda look like besides planning board?
Yeah, planning board's Tuesday, but Wednesday the 20th.
Maddie?
I think I could do the 20th.
Dan? Stanley, if we do an extra meeting Wednesday the 20th, could you come?
Sure.
There you go for a quorum. Wednesday, September 20th. Now, my next thing is I'll check tomorrow right away to see if this space is available. If it is not, sometimes they've let us use another space like the kitchen says for employees only, but I'll bet we could get our way in there. So if this space isn't available, we'll find some other space, because it would be short and I can record it on my phone.
And what time?
7 work? 7.
So
Okay.
you'd be looking to have the materials ahead of time to assess, I would assume, right? Or just bring them to that, what are you looking for?
Yes.
Because I can get them as soon as, I can have them within 2 days, everything you need. And I'll forward it along via email or drop it off, or what do you want?
Sure. Laurie emailed me, so, or you can drop stuff off
Okay.
in the office, either way. Yeah, that'd be good. Yes, good. That would be very good. All right.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, because we were talking about down the side, here's what we're charged with. So for the rules for us, it's for exterior, existing buildings, the exterior front, sides, and rear visible within the historic district of existing buildings may be maintained as is. If the exterior is to be changed, it shall be to maintain or reestablish its basic appearance as of the time of construction or at another period when the facade attained architectural significance. Materials consistent with original construction or other periods of architectural significance shall be used. No significant architectural details may be removed. So that's what we're charged with.
Right. So, you know, and I get it, and that's kind of tough, because when you look at our house, and you, at the very end of the building, it's nothing but sliding glass doors, right? There's nothing historical about that. And even where we're talking right now, the sliders and the deck, right? So our intent is not to bring it back to even that picture there, right? It's just to make it more functional, without making it less appealing visually. Right.
I'm a little slow on the rules. Is there any hardship because they got to move that beam, and I think that's the case for the door being shortened and give me a new window.
So,
Because
Rob,
it's- yeah, is there a hardship part that?
With HDC, there really isn't a hardship criteria like there is for zoning board of adjustment. There are guidelines that the HDC is supposed to follow when making decisions, and within those guidelines, there's all kinds of play, if you will, but there, you know, as Maddie was reading, they're guidelines, and we're supposed to follow those as best we can.
If you've ever been in there, that beam is scary, and I understand. I don't know if you ever saw the building. I have, sure, yeah, I was there.
so
Pushing it back is a good idea if you want to save that part of the house.
Rob, a number of times people have asked for things that are not returning it to the original, but to make living reasonable in this day and age, we say, of course, some changes have to be made. Right. I also agree that if you're going to do, for example, in a major addition, I've been told by historic preservationists, you're not supposed to try to duplicate what the front looked like. You're supposed to make it have its own personality. And so, yeah, so to make it livable or safe, a hardship may be the term to use, but we don't usually use that. Are you planning to, are these jalousie windows that are going to roll out? A jalousie window that roll, what a,
My current plan.
what do you call it?
Casement.
Casement windows.
They look the same, but the outer two.
And the center doesn't.
In the kitchen, it's just a bare to get a functional window past the counter.
Yes.
That crank is the way to safely.
Yes, okay, that's.
So it does change the usage.
Yes. Very good.
So the 20th, thank you all.
So, members, may I have those back so that I'm sure we have them for the next time? So, we will see you at 7 o'clock on September 20th, Wednesday, here, unless I tell you that we're going to be someplace else.
Thank you all very much.
Okay?
The window and the door.
You carry the door and she'll carry the window.
Okay, very good. Good night. Now, I have one other small piece of business, and that's more homework for you folks. I have been giving out certificates of approval that, for which the project should already be completed. And a number of you have given those back, and I'm making a little checklist, and I have a few more. Susan's not here, so I'll save hers for the next time. Glenn. I have 2 for you. Let me make sure I wrote it down. Maybe I only have 1. Same piece of property. Okay. The house has now been sold, a different owner, but the project should be done. So, thank you, Maddie. And, okay, Susan. Rob, I remember when I gave you one before, you said, oh, don't give that to me, I'll lose it. You did not lose it. I'm gonna go through everything. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you what it was. There was one for, the last name was Levesque, Levesque, and the other one was for Ellie Alessio. And their completion date should have been 9/13/2020.
That gave him plenty of time.
Okay, so they look like this, and all the stuff is there. I have copies on my computer, and the building inspector has copies. But now you have one more. So, Stanley, would you give that to Rob? Okay. Okay, Maddie, I have, Maddie, just one for you, Rick Korn's project. Stanley, I have one for you.
Which looks beautiful, by the way.
This is to see if this project has been completed. This is a certificate of approval that should have been completed in 2021. And you're to look at it and see if it was completed, and then say yes or no and bring this back to me. Okay, it's your homework. And Dan. I know, but we haven't checked on them. We were remiss, and Dan, there's one for you, coming your way. Stanley, would you pass that down? I have your names on the paper. And I have 3, actually, that I'm doing. So I just want you to know I'm doing my homework too. And I have a master sheet and spreadsheet that I'm keeping this updated information on, which you do not need to see every time, but I have it, and I think it's good business.
I wanted to bring something up.
Yes.
Over the weekend, I saw a troubling Facebook post about some poor soul that lives in our historic district that received a letter stating that his lighting was out of compliance and needed to be removed. And they seem to think that it was from the historic district. But we don't send letters to people saying your lighting is wrong. And so, but there was a lot of responses thinking that it's the historic district that did that, and they're furious, and I just feel like someone needs to say that that wasn't us. And actually, exterior lighting.
Well, it might very well have been something that the code enforcement officer noticed and, took it upon themselves to, which is part of the code enforcement job, so.
Right, in the letter that they posted what they received, and they actually posted something, Article 302, outdoor lighting, which is not historic district, that would be just the town. So I feel like the historic district is getting a bad rap for this, and
Where is the lighting?
it was, they said it was their front lighting, they'd put up some flickering lights on their front for Halloween or something, and they received a letter from the town, and the perception is it's from the historic district, and we're terrible. I don't know the person, I don't know. It was on the Kingston page.
I saw it as well.
You saw it as well. So I just, you know, because perception, now that he thinks that it's us and everyone he's telling, it's assuming it's us, so it's clearly us, as truth be told. So it's very troubling.
Well, it didn't come from this board, because this board is not an enforcing board.
Right.
If it came from anybody, it would have come from building inspector or code enforcement or something like that.
And wouldn't you think that letter would have been signed?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, it's a social media post.
I know.
It's very hard to know a lot of detail.
You don't want to get involved in that, or just let the sleeping dog lie.
But I don't think it's a sleeping dog. I think it's just racking up. The historic district gets a bad rap, and a citizen petition just passed in December based on hearsay, and it wasn't even true, and so here we are. So if someone thinks it is, and it's not stated that it's not, it is, because they're saying it is, and everyone assumes it is. There were posts saying that we should all go get those lights now.
I don't mind responding, but.
Yeah, my time on the board, it is, I just don't know the right way to address it, but I think it needs to be addressed, or it is, it's been said, and no one's saying it's not. I don't know. Yeah, but they don't watch this.
Well,
I know.
the other thing is that if it was a post, it had a name associated with it, and it was the Kingston page, and it's a moderated page, so unless it was some sort of spam or, you know, artificially generated kind of thing, you never know these days. But if there was a name, and if we knew who the name was, I mean, we could reach out, the chair could reach out to the individual, talk to them,
Yeah.
and say, you know, we'd like to know if there's an issue.
Right.
I think that is the best way to go. During the long Hannaford application, I'll call it a debacle, it got to be quite an event here. I know that Sumner, I was chair of the board at that time, and Sumner Kalman advised me, when things come out, letters to the editor, let the sleeping dog lie unless it's some really awful piece of information that's inaccurate, and then tend to it a different way. If you start the back and forth in whether it's now social media of a Facebook page or a letter to the editor, it usually ends up badly for the person who's trying to defend themselves.
Right.
So I think the idea of getting that person's name and contacting them in person, and I saw it as well. I don't remember the name. I remember thinking, I don't know who that is.
I don't know.
I
I saw the name, I know the name, but I don't know the person, I don't know where they live.
Right. But that could all be
But I think
discovered.
that's a good idea to contact them in person. Because, and he was saying, I mean, if he just moved here and he received a letter, that would be really kind of hard to take. Like, I just got here, I got a new house, I'm so excited to be here. Wham! Take down your lighting. I don't know.
I'm sorry, but I really am skeptical of the post itself, because.
Well, yeah, they did post
I know.
Okay.
I know. First of all, I know that the letter didn't come from here, because we don't do that. We're not an enforcing board.
Right.
And to be honest, you know, with the workload that the building inspector and the code enforcement officer have, for them to be identifying
Flickering light.
a wrong light bulb in a fixture.
Crazy. Yes.
I mean, they can't even get some of the major violations under control. They're not going to be pulling out individual lights on residential homes to complain about. I cannot.
Going with the neighbor.
It could have been a neighbor. A neighbor could have sent that.
Right.
Saying,
And
hey.
it could be.
Yeah.
But I agree that, I mean, the last thing you want to do is get into a social media
Right.
back and forth.
That's true.
That is a no-win situation.
That's what, yeah, yep. So,
I did have a complaint years ago, anonymous one, complaining about a project that a house was working on, and it was one that we had been working with that homeowner. And I talked with the building inspector at that time, and he said, unless a resident signs a complaint, they will not follow through on it.
Right, yeah.
So if the building inspector got a complaint from the neighbor, that name would be there connected to it, because he said, if it's anonymous, we're not doing anything with it.
Right, that'd be ridiculous.
But put something on social media, anybody can do that.
That's right, yeah.
So do you think it's worth contacting that person?
You don't.
Well, I wouldn't do it on,
I don't mean on
Facebook.
Facebook, I mean,
would say,
contact the person in person.
yeah. It might make them feel better that it, you know, that he lives in a historic district and it wasn't a historic district after him or something. I don't know.
Memories tend to be pretty short
Yeah.
with that stuff. You know what I mean? And I can imagine you have to scroll deep into the page.
There was a flurry, I mean, I did read it as well, and there was a flurry, and you know, there was a few back and forth, some comments, the usual stuff.
It's terrible, that's the way our society is with social media, but the words of my sister, not everyone is going to like
He's saying you use your microphone. Now you're in trouble. Speaking of people liking you.
I would go with nothing. That would be.
All right, my only fear is that when voting comes up, that leaves a lasting impression that the historic district is that way, and we're unreasonable, and we're doing ridiculous things, and that's not the truth. But that will be left in as the truth.
If I am reading a post like that, and I like historical things, I'm glad you're like that. And again, that story about the door, I'm not kidding you, it ruined me forever. Yeah. It destroyed that whole street. And I do not mind being pictured as overzealous, or, because you kind of have to be. So, I mean, I know, but if you're not, trust me, things get bad, and...
So we let it go.
We have discussed sending out, we have sent letters out to all the addresses in HD 1 and 2 with an updated newsletter of information or greeting, or there are new people on your street, welcome them, or it's a challenge to live in the historic district. I have a copy of one right here. Maybe the most you put out another letter like that. Include a few things such as we do this and we don't do that, and make it in a friendly way and serve our homeowners in that way.
I mean, we try to be accommodating. We made it a special meeting for you, for the solar panels, for Lori and Dan. We try to work with people, so it's sad.
And to be honest, I mean, we make more concessions than I think we should.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's true.
And again, you know, I think that, you know, it's a small community. We, you know, the people who are sitting before us are our neighbors, and we can relate to them.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard to be a hard nose about it, but at the same time, we have a specific charge in this town as a board, and so, I mean, we do make concessions a lot.
In the words of my sister.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So maybe we go, but maybe we go about it in a positive way.
So the last time, several months ago, we were talking about this
Yes.
similar topic, not the
Yes.
same, not the post, but it was another thing. And we talked about doing an updated newsletter. And at that point, I did start drafting a revised one. So maybe I could have something to you
Excellent.
for the board to consider as a.
You want me to get a picture of the ugly door so you can include it? I'm not kidding. It might help, right?
Good.
I'm
Good. I would like that. Go ahead, Stanley.
I hate to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I'm curious about these inspections. What would be the rules of engagement? Because I think I would be intruding on somebody's privacy. I really think so. I don't think we should be policemen in this town.
I think I said before, Stanley, this would be anything you could observe from the outside. So you could see it going by. If there was something on that application that would be hard to see and you felt like you needed to go on the property, you would certainly need to ask someone's permission. But I said before, it's an observation from driving by. It's not a walk around the house and inspecting every nook and cranny.
Well, this is, my assignment's a solar project, and it should be completed by now.
Yes.
How do I know if it's been completed unless I go to the company itself? But if they have a personal relationship with the owner of the house, it's not with me.
If you go by and it's a solar panel on a house, let's say, you should be able to look up and see if it's there. I'm not asking you
If it's working.
if it's working, if it's for the specifications or whatever.
Okay.
Just go by, yep, the Joneses put a solar panel on their house and it said it was gonna be black and flush. Okay, that's all that I'm looking for. And then we can say, yes, it was done.
Wouldn't it be better to ask the owner to come in and speak about whether his or her project has been completed? Because they would be in a better position to give you up-to-date information.
I suppose we could do that. I don't know that it's really necessary. Does the board feel that that's necessary?
That'd be a little onerous. I mean, a drive-by visual, I think, is all we're looking for. Like me, I'm gonna drive by and look at the barn and see if they put those barn doors up.
Yes,
And if they didn't, and they don't match what's on here, I'll come back and report.
yes.
You know, that solar panel similar to the 157, you drive by, they look great, by the way.
Yes, they
look
do.
great. They really do. Kind of excited because I want some someday. But you drive by and it's easy to see that that was completed just as you're driving. You don't even have to slow down and stop. And I think that's what the goal is, to just see, are they there? Are they black?
Yes.
Are they flush?
Yes.
Does it match what they,
Check.
right?
Yes. If there was some remarkable change, they said they were gonna put on a deck this big and it's this big.
Right.
Then, that, again, we're not the enforcing board. If we wanted to report that, then we would talk about it perhaps at this meeting and talk to the building inspector. But those checks are important because we've had some serious alterations in projects under construction, and if you don't notice it, it's a tough change and an expensive one, and that's happened a couple of times. But at least this says, done.
I think we're obligated to it. I mean, there's nothing worse than, for instance, you get a building permit for a roof. You pay the fee for it, but no inspector ever comes by and inspects the roof. It's pure profit for the town is all it is, and that's what bugs me. If an inspector is paid to come and look at a job and say, hey, it's completed, it's safe, then I don't mind paying the permit. But when I have to buy a permit for something that no one's gonna check on, that gets in my crawl. We have to do that also. We have to check on these projects and make sure that these jobs are we owe it to the citizens of this town, you know?
And
If they haven't done it, then we can say, hey, your time's almost up, you got 2 years and it's almost done, you gotta get in here, better get going.
yes, and people have done that. They can get an extension, and if the project isn't done, they should have it, or maybe it's all done and you're waiting for the wood to cure and you haven't gotten it painted yet. It's time to do that sort of thing.
Another thing I want to bring up, isn't this really a job of the building inspector to see the project has been completed?
That's what Dan
We're
was
not
just,
qualified to do this.
right, that's what Dan was just saying. The building inspector should go and see if my new porch is safe, or if the solar panels are correct. We're just saying, they asked for this, we gave them permission for this, yes, it's done. Not whether the porch is built safe, or they're all gonna fall down, or whatever. It's supposed to look like this, does it?
Our job is just to approve applications, but not to inspect whether it's been done. That's really up to the building inspector to do that. I think we're out of our jurisdiction.
I think, it's our jurisdiction because we care more about visual. You know what I mean? Is it correct? Like mine, they wanted to put in a double door on the barn. Well, we want that double door to look this way. I don't care if it opens. I don't care if it closes. I just want the visual of the front of the building to match historically what we've approved.
Right. We're here for respect.
Yeah, we're not here to, is it functional? We're not here for, I don't believe that, you know what I mean, you're right, that is building inspector, but in the case, if you have solar panels, we've let those people put those on the roof, but we've said that they need to be black, they need to be flush, and this is what you proposed it to look like. Well, I'm gonna, and again, that's, they have a drawing on mine of exactly what it's supposed to look like, and I, again, is it functional? I don't care. Does it work? Don't know. But that's what you told me you were gonna put there, and that's what's there. So I think to us, it's more visual than functional. I would agree with you that things of a bigger nature, building inspector, that's all up to him. But for us, to put that on the building inspector, he's overburdened already. And it's just a visual that we can drive by and inspect and come back and report. We're not looking to find anybody because we have no jurisdiction there. We just wanted to make sure that what they told us they were gonna do, they did in a visual sense.
And everything we do is in visual sense, quite honestly.
Correct, yeah,
Approve anything that we can.
yeah.
Right. We're only approving things that we can see, things that we gave permission for.
Nothing inside the house.
Stanley, I think if you're uncomfortable doing that, give that back and I'll have someone else do it. I don't think you should do that if you're uncomfortable.
No, I just
Doing that
wanted to get some
observation.
guidance on this because,
Okay, good.
you know, we're getting too judgmental. And,
Well, we're pretty judgmental when they come for an application,
of course,
okay? We want it to look this way. It needs to meet designs of the house. It needs to meet period of the house. We want to know the materials. So we're pretty, I'll say judgmental, pretty conscientious about what we ask them to do. And there it is, very specific as possible on the application. Is it done? That's all. Okay.
well, that clears that up for me.
Okay. Don't need to knock on the door.
No.
You don't need to climb on the roof.
People do not like when you knock on
No.
doors. They get, who's here?
Right.
I had the state in my yard verifying the appraisal value, badge, everything, state of New Hampshire.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Freak me. You know, yeah, my wife was home. She doesn't like when people knock on the door. I'm okay with it. She doesn't like that. I can understand that.
Yeah.
I never heard of that one, but she had credentials and. Yeah,
You do or do not?
well, you always want to let them. Because if not, they come up with their own stuff.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
it's just a thing. Well, I think we all got, it was a good number and it was a bad number. But I live in heaven, so I'm never leaving.
Maddie, do you have something for us?
I have updated, you're gonna see soon, the regulations and ordinances that we've been updating ourselves. This is the final copy that we've been working on. That's everything, and There's actually 3 in there. There's our regulations, our ordinances, and there's a change to the shed, which is not our ordinance, we're gonna ask the planning board to add. All the red is what we're changing, and there should be 3 different stacks in there. One single page is the shed change, and then the regulations and ordinances separate.
Bring snacks.
Oh, it's gonna be, this is so long.
Because they're getting into it. They have a lot of red too. They want, I mean, I get it. They anticipate, they need some changing. The language on a lot of them are different. Jurisdictional things are gonna come into play. And
Yep.
having everybody at the table talking about, I mean, good groups, 2 good groups of people.
Yeah, yes, yes.
I said good.
Yeah, I think it's funny because there's a lot of discussion about merging things, but we have ordinances that the town has voted on, and that's our ordinances, and then our regulations are what our board votes on, and so those are 2 separate documents. You can't really mix those, and just as the planning board has the ordinances that the town votes on, and your site plan, and your, what's the one, subdivision, those are separate, you can't put those together.
A bit of our discussion over there has also been, just so you know, we'd like to try to streamline things, so people aren't back and forth between select board, planning board, zoning board, historical commission. And again, historical commission has its own separate place there. We have our own separate zone, we have different things that we have to care about.
Right.
But trying to streamline the process so someone doesn't have to come here to go back there was also brought up. I mean, you don't see a lot here, but zoning, back and forth to zoning, who's got jurisdiction on that? If we don't take jurisdiction, can it just be decided there so they don't have to come back here? But again, that's a kind of a slippery slope too.
Yes.
I should have mentioned that during my update for you all. Susan Prescott, the chair of the HDC, and myself did a modification to the HDC application and added a step in the process when someone submits an application for HDC. It now goes first to Glenn Greenwood, or whoever's sitting in the town planner seat, to make a determination on whether it's an allowed use. And if it is, check the box, comes to HDC. So the use determination is done before it reaches any board. So that piece of it, at least, has now been streamlined a bit, so that so someone doesn't come here and then all of a sudden finds out that it's not an allowed use, or and because we're not supposed to be talking about we're not supposed to be making that determination, it's now on the part of the town staff to make that call. And if it is not an allowed use, the applicant is told, and they can modify their application, or they can seek a variance, or whatever they need to do. If it is an allowed use, it gets checked, gets passed along for us to process. And if it's a gray area and the planner isn't quite sure, he has the option to bring it to the planning board for discussion.
Does Glenn sit in on the dual meeting?
Yeah.
He's one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life, without a doubt. I love that guy. But he's got to be in a hot seat.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, the joint meeting is your regular planning board meeting, so he'll be there.
Yeah.
So, Lori, who is here tonight, is also a select person, and she said she would help modify the application process so that the applicant knew the process. And they're working on a format for procedures. But the new application is what she filled out. And so she and Susan have worked on it. I don't know if they've come to a final agreement. Excuse me. But this says, the applicant will not be placed on an agenda until HDC chair or vice chair determines, 1, the application is complete. The new piece says, and 2, a zoning determination has been completed by the town planner, indicating that the proposed use is allowed in the historic district. And so the signature page of our application now has Glenn Greenwood's signature on it.
Awesome.
So I have reviewed this application and determined that it is an allowed use in the historic district per Kingston zoning article, and then he puts it in, he signed it, and it said, or I have determined it is not. So that's been added to this form, so that when I got it, I know Glenn's already seen it. And he and I actually had a good discussion about it at the post office the other day. And he agrees that if it's something simple like gutters or a door change, if it's something he's not sure, he would contact either Susan or me and have a good conversation about it before he signed on one of the 2 dotted lines. So I think that helps the applicant.
What happens when a contractor then pulls a permit for a project on a home? And it doesn't need to go to the planning board, but they won't approve it because it's in the historic district and hold up a project, i.e. my case with my roof. The inspector wouldn't do the permit because it's in the historic district and it didn't need to.
I have to think, Dan, that he didn't get it, because we allow solar panels, we allow repairs, and both Susan and I responded to him, and I don't understand why that didn't happen. I really am dumbfounded that it got so stuck there.
And I've heard other people with the same situation, and that's, you know, people are hung up for 4 weeks on projects because it's hung up somewhere, you know?
We need to meet with that.
That was part of our conversation about the, where do we have them start? Because we've had quite a few in the planning board where I'm sitting there wondering why they're here and why didn't they get approval for you, or in this particular case, I thought denial, and didn't even make it to us. I thought they should have started here, then came to us, because we wouldn't even look. And then I think Glenn mentioned a couple instances where, nope, that's gonna be reversed, because
I wouldn't think the planning board chair would even accept something that was going to be a project within the historic district without that certificate.
The town's process, for as long as I've been involved with it, on the planning board side, has been that if it's in the historic district, they go to HDC first, get that squared away, and then if they need to come to planning board for site plan review or whatever, then they go. And at that point, they would have had their approvals on the look and feel elements of the application.
But if it's a replacement of something that's not gonna be like a roof, it doesn't need to come here.
No.
Right.
That is correct. If you're replacing,
But when
If you're
these
changing-
contractors go down and get permits, they're hanging it up downstairs because, oh, we gotta give it to the HDC, and that's not the case.
So it's an education component for the building office.
For the inspectors, okay. That makes sense that would be it.
Because if it's a maintenance item, and if you're replacing like with like, if you're replacing an asphalt roof with an asphalt roof, that doesn't require a permit from us or a certificate.
it does
of
not.
approval.
Not from the HDC.
And I wrote such a letter to Susan Ayer because I didn't know, just a second, I didn't know how to contact the building inspector at that time. And I wrote that, and it should have been passed on to the building inspector. And then Susan Prescott did the same thing. So none of us understand why that wasn't okayed. Don't know. We would like to
But my
hear from
thought
the
is
public.
maybe it should be spelled out somewhere that if you're doing a project and it's of like
It's
material.
in there, we quoted it. We quoted it to the building inspector. right from our ordinance.
I was just gonna say, I think it's.
This is
specific-
Scott Willett.
Scott Willett, 180
Public.
Main Street. Just on the comment of the roof, I think it might be specific to the building inspector himself, because we had a garage roof. Light materials, maintenance, the contractor pulled the permit, the roof was done in half a day, and no hiccups. So I think it might be that inspector.
It might be the educational.
Yeah, because it's been a year now, or a couple of years, so it's a different inspector, no issues, so. I think it's specific to the inspector.
Thank you.
Learning curve.
And you were on it, or you were the cause of it, or
Poor
you
Dan.
suffered from it, I'm sorry.
Getting slapped all ways here.
I know. Since then, I actually have had contact from the building inspector on a repair of a chimney. A chimney that was just gonna be fixed with bricks and done exactly, and I said, thank you for contacting me. So it appears that he's learning, because I said, no, still gonna be bricks, still this, nothing's changed, it's just a repair, doesn't require a certificate, and I referred to our ordinance again, so. Well, folks,
Have we had enough fun?
I have.
Then, unless there's other business, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the meeting is closed at 8:56, 8:50.